Let's get ready to mortgage. He is the prince of programs, guru of guidelines, master of matrices. He puts the fun in funding. Please welcome Mark, Mr. Mortgage, I tell.
All right, my name is Mark Eitel, and you are listening to the Mr. Mortgage Show. And that is true. I am the guru of guidelines, the prince of programs, and I do put the fun in funding. But more importantly, I am here to answer any of your questions that you may have. If you've got questions about real estate, about mortgages, what are these interest rates going to do to the housing market? Man, how high are rates going to go? Are we talking about Snoop Dogg high or just your son-in-law at the party? Because things are getting quite interesting out there. But guys, you're in the right place if you want the information, the data, the tips, the tricks, the strategies that you need so you can go out there and make better real estate and mortgage decisions for you and your family. Again, my name is Mark Eitel, and you are listening to the Mr. Mortgage Show. Each week, we start the show by covering some of the activities in the housing market of the most recent week. And this week was all about the Federal Reserve's reaction, or the upcoming reaction, the anticipated reaction to these crazy inflation numbers. And guys, I don't know about you, but if one more politician tells me, don't worry, there's no threat of a recession, inflation is going to be under control in no time, I want to take him out back and have a conversation with him, because we have to admit, what's the 12-step program? The first, what is it? The first step to solving a problem is admitting you have a problem, something along those lines. Clearly, you can gather that I've never admitted that I have a problem, but neither are the politicians. I heard President Biden tell us that he doesn't think that we're going to have a recession, which is quite interesting, because with what's going on in the inflationary side of things, the Fed's going to continue to raise rates until we pull into a recession. But anyway, all of that aside, real estate is still a good place to be in a recession, and we're going to get to all that. But I want to talk about, some of the news of the week, right? The CPI numbers came out, scorching hot inflation. And I just want to ask you a question. Do you remember this song? I'm going to throw this out at you, and bear with me because I'm a terrible singer, but are you ready? Here we go. Abra, abracadabra, Steve Miller Band, okay? How about, here's another one. So Caught Up in You, Little Girl, 38 Special. I know, these are unrecognizable to everybody out there. Somebody just pulled over and they're trying to turn the dial, like, what is going on? All right, one more, and then we'll move along. How about I ran so far away, I couldn't get away, Flock of Seagulls. Where am I going with this? How about this? My dad has an awesome set of tools. He's a TV repairman. I can fix it. Fast Times at Ridgemont High. And lastly, E.T. Phone Home. E.T. the extra. What does all of that have in common? All of those songs and movies came out in 1982. We haven't had inflation this hot in this country for 40 years. 1982 was the last time that we saw numbers like we're seeing now. And that's what's got everybody super concerned, that the Fed's got to continue aggressive action. And the last bullet that he has in the chamber is interest rates. So very, very likely that we are going to continue to see increases in interest rates during the next two Fed meetings. It's almost a 90%, I don't want to say lock, but the economists agree, 97% of the economists agree that there's a three-quarter price hike coming in November. So if you're going to borrow money, I guess now is the time, right? While rates are still low compared to where they could go in the short-term future. But here's an article. It's talking about the Fed losing the war against inflation. And it talks about core prices, which exclude food and energy, which always frustrate the heck out of me, because I think the average person spends the majority of their income on food and energy if you take housing out. So I'm always fascinated why we remove those two. But nonetheless, core inflation numbers, as I mentioned, have hit their highest since 1982, which is not an uncommon theme for this year. We've hit it a couple times. But, the Fed's kind of having to double down on its plans to raise interest rates to offset inflation. And they've said on more than one occasion that they're willing to cause a little bit of pain to the consumer to do that. And guys, I don't know about you, but we're seeing more than just a little bit of pain in the consumer right now. But Thursday's number was hotter than expected. You know, and this is the last major economic report that they're going to have prior to November's Fed meeting, where they're likely going to raise rates. So they're going to make their next decision based on the data accumulated in these reports. And that's why most people agree that there's about a 97% chance, as I mentioned, that we're going to see a sixth straight increase, and this one is likely to be 0.75 of a point. So sit tight, buckle up. Things are going to continue to become more expensive before they get more affordable. And we talk about it all the time. The Fed's raising rates to try to cool demand because they can't increase supply. They have no control over supply. And they're still pointing to things like the supply chain and, limited production worldwide just getting ramped back up, which is interesting, right? Because then you read headlines that say Nike is overstocked, so they're putting items on sale. The major retailers are anticipating having to cut prices to get sales in the door for this holiday season because the consumer is slowing down their spending. The challenge is, much like navigating a boat, it's easy to overcorrect. The Fed is piling all these costs on the borrowing of money, and it doesn't have an immediate effect. I mean, we're 9 months into this, or 7 months? I have to do the math, but over 3/4 of a year, or darn near 3/4 of a year into this hiking cycle, and we're not seeing any slowing. So it's interesting to see where we go from here. The good news is that, as I mentioned, housing has a tendency to do well during inflationary cycles and recession cycles. And if you're out there paying rent and you want a fixed payment, well, having a fixed mortgage payment's probably the only way to do it, because the most recent survey I read, most landlords anticipate an additional rent hike on this next renewal period. And it's not greedy landlords, guys. Their costs are going up considerably. Their taxes aren't protected by homestead exemption. So when property values go up, their taxes go up. If they have adjustable rate debt on those properties, those payments go up. Their insurance is going up, just like homeowners insurance, somebody who owns their primary. So I'm saying all that because it's easy to point the finger at the landlords and think they're just really pressing in on people who don't have a choice. But the reality is that's a business. They own that property to generate income. And that cost of running that business for them is increasing at the same pace that all the other expenses of life are increasing for us. And none of this article is news to you if you listen to the show. None of this is dramatic. Oh my God, he's shedding light on something we had no idea about. We've been talking about this for months and months and months here on the Mr. Mortgage Show. But I'm going to share this because this scares the heck out of me. One of these brilliant economists, his name is Rakeen Mabood. He's the chief economist of the left-leaning, this is their description of themselves because I don't do politics, left-leaning groundwork collaborative policy group. He ends his quote in this article by saying, "It is time for the Federal Reserve to step aside and let Congress step in." Guys, that scares the hell out of me because Congress are the same people that are paying off student loans, which is adding to anyway, Congress is not the people to solve our monetary policy. Congress are the guys who like to spend money, so we reelect them. So got super nervous when I read that somebody out there is actually advocating that Congress step in and the Fed get out of the way, because that makes me nervous. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed the 1982 references. I hope you enjoyed 1982 if you were alive then. Dom doesn't have any idea what 1982 was all about. He looked very puzzled through all of my song and movie references. Actually, guys, you don't see what happens behind the scenes here, but I feel bad for Dom because he and I are both sitting in front of microphones. We both have headphones on, and we've got the headphones on so we don't hear ourselves. I mean, we hear ourselves, but the other mic doesn't pick up the sound that's coming out. I know that's not the best technical explanation, but that poor guy had headphones on to hear my singing is where I'm going with this. So we certainly appreciate you putting up with us. But we're going to cover all of that in depth. This is still a good place to be owning real estate. That's all I'm going to go. That's as far as I'm going to go with it. On the other side of this break, we're going to dive really deep into all that. We're going to take your questions as we do every week. I'm going to encourage you to call or text your questions to 855-462-7292. That's 855-462-7292. But you hear the music? That is my cue. We'll be back in 2. Sit tight for 2 short minutes. On the other side of this break will be more of the Mr. Mortgage Show. It's not every day that you need an appraisal, whether it's for a divorce settlement, estate planning, or maybe you're appealing a tax assessment, or you just want to make sure you have adequate coverage in your property insurance. When you need a certified appraisal, turn to my friends at soflappraisal.com. That's soflappraisal.com. Peter and his team have been appraising properties here in South Florida for decades. soflappraisal.com. And tell them you heard this on the Mr. Mortgage Show.
Here's another 5-star review.
My wife and I own a small business. And the way our accountant file our taxes, we don't show much income on tax returns. Because of this, it looks as if we don't make the money. This was a problem for our bank when we applied for a mortgage. But not for Mark. He verifies our income by using our monthly bank statements. Mark and his Mr. Mortgage team made a big difference for me. Yes, I am happy to recommend Mr. Mortgage Mark.
Hey, it's Mark Eitel, host of the Mr. Mortgage Show. You hear me all the time talking about the need to have the very best team representing you in a real estate transaction. And that starts with a really great agent. If you've got a great agent, that's awesome. But if you don't, check out www.reallyGreatAgents.com. There you'll find the best of the best, regardless of the city they work in or the brokerage they work for. www.reallyGreatAgents.com. www.reallyGreatAgents.com.
Are inflation and everyday expenses eating into your retirement income? Maybe you've considered a reverse mortgage and have unanswered questions like, do I still own my property? Can the bank kick me out? What happens when I die? Can I still leave my house to my kids? These are all great questions. Visit www.moreaboutreverse.com to learn more. That's www.moreaboutreverse.com. www.moreaboutreverse.com.
Welcome back to the Mr. Mortgage Show. Call us now at 855-462-7292.
All right, we are back. My name is Mark Eitel. You heard the man call or text. He always leaves that off, and I'm not, big enough to go in there and threaten him with physical violence. So I'm sending Dom in on the next break and tell Ike, you got to remind people they can text that number too. 855-462-7292. Call or text that number, 855-462-7292. But yeah, we opened up the show with my medley of 1982 hit songs. If you'd like to add one to the list or just want to sing to us, give us a call. I'm open to adding any hits from the 80s to that list. But we opened the show by talking about we haven't seen these inflation numbers since 1982. And because of that, the Federal Reserve is very likely to continue their aggressive rate hikes in an attempt to quell this, and we can anticipate paying more for any adjustable rate debt moving forward. And we're likely to see more inflation before this thing cools. So sit tight. Real estate's a good place to be historically in these type of markets. So that's what we're here to talk about. Unless you want to talk about 80s music and big poofy hair and if I had enough hair, I'd bring back the mullet haircut. I did rock a mullet haircut back in the 80s, but let's leave the 80s in the past, I guess. Dom's over there giving me the stinky sign. He's pinching his nose like he does not appreciate my singing. But I know he's got a couple questions ready, so let me throw it over to Dom to see what we have question-wise.
Jessica sent an email. Are there any 100% loans other than Hometown Heroes? My job is not on the list of approved professions.
Hey, Jessica, I appreciate that question. That is a great question. And for anybody listening who's unaware, Hometown Heroes is a program that this state launched. I believe it was just Florida, but I might be wrong about that. I'll do some double checking. But anyway, Hometown Heroes is a loan program designed for, and it's a pretty broad group of people, professions that they've included, but it's teachers, first responders. So think, cops, firefighters, paramedics, doctors, nurses, so medical professions. But we talked about it in the past. I mean, it goes all the way to, the strip mall and, the massage therapist that has an office in the strip mall. I wasn't talking about strippers. Although if they added strippers to Hometown Heroes, they might have a broader market. But anyway, so Jessica, to answer your question, yes, there are many other choices, and we're super excited about a new one that we're just about ready to roll out. It's a 100% loan program designed for first-time home buyers, regardless of your profession or heroes. So it's everybody, including the heroes, which is awesome. And I say or heroes because if you're in that qualifying profession, you don't have to be a first-time home buyer. But everybody else, as long as you're a first-time home buyer, you're eligible. Now, there are income requirements. There are all kinds of moving parts that have to be check to make sure you qualify. But here's the really cool thing. It lays on top of an FHA loan. So right off the bat, you've got, a nice broad opportunity to qualify. The FHA guidelines are more forgiving is where I'm going with that. So you get a first mortgage with FHA of 96.5%. And then this down payment assistance portion lays on top of it an additional 3.5%. Now, here's why I'm so excited about this program compared to Hometown Heroes. The second mortgage, that DPA piece, that 3.5%, is forgivable. And it's not forgivable after a certain, number of years. I think it's actually, I might be wrong, it might be 6 or 8 months. We're just working out the details now. But my point is, unlike Hometown Heroes, that second mortgage doesn't have to be repaid. It never requires any debt service, and as little as a few months, and I'll investigate to confirm that, it's forgiven. I know it's forgiven. I know there is no debt service. I'm just unsure if it's 6 months or 8 months. But my point is, it's basically like your rich uncle giving you 3.5%. So if you meet the guidelines for FHA, 96.5% loan, you're suddenly now able to get 100% financing. And you can use a seller contribution up to 6% of the sales price to use that money for closing costs. So super cool loan program. It's brand new to us. We're just rolling it out in Florida and Virginia at the moment. South Carolina, we're rolling it out, Michigan, and Wisconsin. So that's the first states that we're rolling it out, but it'll be nationwide soon. So I'm going to have a website that I can give out for that very shortly, but for the time being, it's still in work. But we'll have it available to the public here in next week or 2 weeks. Give us 2 weeks and we'll be ready to roll that out. But very excited about that program because we find oftentimes it's not the ability to pay that's holding people back, not even the credit worthiness. It's the ability to save that down payment. And we just talked about the inflation numbers and the way things are getting more and more expensive and rent is getting hiked every single renewal period. It's hard to save money right now in this economy. Wages aren't keeping pace with all this inflation. So suddenly there's a bigger bite out of your wallet everywhere you turn. How are you going to save money for a down payment? Well, here's an opportunity to get into a property with 100% financing and call it an immediate forgiven second mortgage of 3.5% because you're never going to have to pay that portion of it back. And I just think it's an amazing program. So I appreciate that question, Jessica. I'm super excited about it. And I know a mortgage is a hard thing to get excited about, but this is the same guy who sings 80 songs to serenade you to open the show. So maybe it doesn't take much, but great question. I hope that helps. If you need more information, give us a call. 855-462-7292. Hey, Dom, do we have any other questions ready?
Cynthia sent a text. We're selling our house and we have an offer, but the buyer says they can't close for 90 days. They have a mortgage approval, but I'd like to ask, how do I know their approval is good for 90 days?
Hey, that is a great question. And hey, kudos to you for catching that because you do need to be concerned that their approval is good for 90 days because when Dom was reading that question, the very first thing that jumped into my mind is, are they going to be approved in 90 days? Because we're likely going to see higher interest rates. So the very first thing I would want to know is that rate locked for a period of time that gets them to and then past closing? And I say past closing because God forbid you need a day or two extension for some crazy reason. you don't want that rate to expire, because if they're approved and locked today, there's a strong probability that interest rates are going to be higher in 90 days. So I would ask, how long is the rate locked for? And then I would also want to know, what is the holdup for 90 days? Are they selling a property? Are they just liquidating some other assets and they need the time to get the money together? Is it a seasoning issue? There's a lot that I would want to know to give you better advice, and I'm happy to have a conversation with you if you want to give us a call. But the very first ask that I would make is the rate locked for at least 90 days? So I hope that helps. That's a really interesting question. Give us a call if you need more info. But let's take another question. Dom, what do we have?
Kristen sent this. If the government is raising rates, but inflation is still growing, how much higher do you think they need to go before they stop raising them?
Ooh, that's a good question. Hold on, ready? Snoop Dogg high. No, I don't know. I really don't know. It's interesting because I don't want to scare you like we're going to 12% or 10%. But honestly, I don't have a crystal ball. What we need to have happen is the inflation to slow down. And as I mentioned in the opening, it doesn't have an immediate effect. It's not like rate hikes in August immediately cool September's inflation. We just saw that, right? Here's another scorching hot inflation report. So we do need time for all of this to take effect. I'm hoping that we get through this holiday season, and right now consumer sentiment is low. There's a lot of people who are anticipating spending less this year than last. If we get through that cycle and spending is down, that's what the Fed is trying to accomplish with these rates. So we might be at an inflection point at the beginning of next year where there's enough data in the pipeline for the Fed to say, okay, let me ease back a little bit, because right now they have one foot on the gas and one on the brake. And I mean, they've demonstrated an inability to forecast and get out in front of this. So I'm hoping we get through this cycle of holiday shopping and the numbers are down as they anticipate, so that the Fed can back off and see that they're accomplishing their goal by quelling spending. But brilliant question. I know a lot of us have that same question. We're going to sit tight and just watch the market moves, watch unemployment, watch supply and demand. That's going to be the tipping point for anything. But hey, guys, you hear the music. That's my cue. My cue. We will be back in two. Sit tight for 2 minutes. On the other side of this break, we're going to take more of your questions and continue the mortgage mayhem. Hey, it's Mark Eitel, host of the Mr. Mortgage Show. You hear me all the time talking about the need to have the very best team representing you in a real estate transaction. And that starts with a really great agent. If you've got a great agent, that's awesome. But if you don't, check out www.reallyGreatAgents.com. There you'll find the best of the best, regardless of the city they work in or the brokerage they work for. www.reallyGreatAgents.com, www.reallyGreatAgents.com. It's not every day that you need an appraisal, whether it's for a divorce settlement, estate planning, or maybe you're appealing a tax assessment, or you just want to make sure you have adequate coverage in your property insurance. When you need a certified appraisal, turn to my friends at SOFLappraisal.com. That's SOFLappraisal.com. Peter and his team have been appraising properties here in South Florida for decades. SOFLappraisal.com. And tell them you heard this on the Mr. Mortgage Show. Hey, it's Mark Eitel, host of the Mr. Mortgage Show. You hear me all the time talking about the need to have the very best team representing you in a real estate transaction. And that starts with a really great agent. If you've got a great agent, that's awesome. But if you don't, check out www.reallyGreatAgents.com. There you'll find the best of the best, regardless of the city they work in or the brokerage they work for. www.reallyGreatAgents.com, www.reallyGreatAgents.com. It's not every day that you need an appraisal, whether it's for a divorce settlement, estate planning, or maybe you're appealing a tax assessment, or you just want to make sure you have adequate coverage in your property insurance. When you need a certified appraisal, turn to my friends at SOFLappraisal.com. That's SOFLappraisal.com. Peter and his team have been appraising properties here in South Florida for decades. SOFLappraisal.com. And tell them you heard this on the Mr. Mortgage Show.
Welcome back to the Mr. Mortgage Show. Call us now at 855-462-7292.
All right, we are back. My name is Mark Eitel, and you are listening to the Mr. Mortgage Show, and we are super excited to have you with us. If you are just tuning in, Dom and I do this each week right here, same time, same station. So far, we've had some really good questions. We talked about some 100% loan programs for first-time buyers, some forgivable grants, some strategies to get somebody in there with little or no money out of pocket who might be sitting on the sidelines trying to save money in this crazy inflationary cycle that we're in. And this might be an option. We also talked about selling a house and waiting 90 days to close and some pros and cons around that. And then Kristen had a great question regarding how high can the rates go? And you heard my thoughts around that. And guys, if you're just tuning in and you missed any of that and you want more of it, you can always visit MrMortgageRadio.com, MrMortgageRadio.com. Each week when we finish up, before we leave the studio, we pick up all the empty vodka bottles, the beer bottles. We clean everything up, so we spray some lights all around, and then Dom posts the recorded version of the show up to the podcast page, which is MrMortgageRadio.com. So if you want more of it, check us out there, and we'd love to hear your comments or give us a call and let us know if you have additional questions. But hey, speaking of questions, I'm going to throw it over to Dom right now because I know we've had some more come in.
Bert sent this one. Just curious, how long does the reverse mortgage take? We're on a fixed income and can use the additional money.
Hey, Bert, that is a great question. So we have been doing that seminar series. You've heard me talk about it, and we were going to do it with Heather and her team, and we're still working on doing it down in the South County. But we did the first two up in Palm Beach Gardens last week. And man, wow, what a great crowd, great questions. Bert, if you'd like to get on the guest list, we'd love to have you for the next one. But to answer your question, it's very similar to a typical mortgage process. I would plan on 45 days only because right now there is a lot of interest in the reverse mortgage product, and there aren't a lot of lenders that offer the product. So right now, there are several people that are pushing transactions through the same channel. So I think, 30 to 45 days, but I would plan on the 45-day side of things just to be safe. And if you have questions, give us a call, 855-462-7292. That's the Anytime hotline. I'd love to invite you to one of the seminars. There's no cost, no obligation. I've been doing them in conjunction with some financial planning groups and then sometimes on my own where we're just talking to the crowd specifically about reverse mortgages. And it's much like the radio show. We just it's very casual. It's a Q&A. So if you've got additional interest, I encourage you to give us a call, shoot us a text or an email, and we will get you on the seminar list. But man, I'm bummed to hear that you're feeling the pinch, but you are not alone, my man. There are a lot of people under pressure with this economy right now. And there are several people who the home equity is the only option they have. And, a reverse mortgage requires no monthly mortgage payment. So versus a cash out refinance or an equity line, it's a good option for a lot of people. But hey, Bert, appreciate your question. I'm going to toss it over to Dom and see if he's got another one ready.
Denise is asking, both my husband and I have full-time and part-time jobs. Can we use our part-time jobs to help us qualify? When I search online, I'm getting confusing answers.
Hey, that is a great question. That was Denise. Hey, Denise, wonderful question. So yes, and I understand how you're getting confusing answers because there are stipulations on how to use that part-time or second job income to qualify. So very first, you'll want to have been there for a year. And then hours and pay need to be consistent. But I can walk you through all that. But yes, you both can use your part-time income. And we're in the middle of a transaction right now. The husband and wife both have, very, very different jobs, but they also both work for Home Depot. And they do it because they participate in the Home Depot benefits. Home Depot pays them well. They enjoy working there. I mean, I think I've gotten to know the husband and wife, and I think he spends as much as he makes, probably why he's working there, so he gets the employee discount and first access to all the cool tools. But anyway, we're doing that very exact thing with them right now. They both have long-term, stable, full-time jobs, but they need that part-time income to help them qualify for what they're looking for. Now, with them, they are both going to have been there for over a year in December, and their lease isn't up until February, so we're getting them ready now. But my point is, it's certainly doable. Just make sure you meet that requirement of having that second job in place for a year. Full year. Hope that helps. That was a fantastic question. I appreciate it. Hey, Dom, what else do we have?
Here's an email from Patrick. I saw on TikTok that I could save money if I deal directly with the seller's real estate agent. How does this work? Is there a downside to working with the seller's real estate agent?
Hey, Patrick, that's a great question. And I was going to make a gigantic TikTok joke because I see a lot of things on TikTok that aren't real. I promise you they're not real. But, it's interesting. I've got a friend. You guys hear me advertise for really great agents on this show, reallyGreatAgents.com. And that is a service that we're proud to provide where we can get you in touch with, the best of the best. And we're talking about their transaction history, but more importantly, their willingness and ability to serve the client. They really have the heart for the business. And a friend of mine, she's a big part of that. She's a TikTok queen. I mean, literally millions and millions of views on TikTok. And I'm embarrassed to say I don't know much about it. And she's not a spring chicken. I mean, she's a beautiful woman, but she's in her 50s. And during the pandemic, she found TikTok as an outlet. And she doesn't do dances and, what's that milk crate challenge? Is that thing where they stack all the milk crates and try to walk over them and then, they're going butt over tea kettle down into a big pile of bruised flesh and plastic crates? She doesn't do any of that, but she sets a camera up and she'll share stories, kind of like what I do on this show. And because of that, she's gotten a lot of client interest and met a lot of people who have turned out to be clients. So I was going to laugh at you a little bit for, getting your mortgage and real estate news from TikTok. And then I remembered that she's on there. So maybe she was the one. Actually, she wasn't the one because that's not good advice. So I'm going to answer your question. Does it make sense to use the listing agent, right? The one representing the seller? And there's a lot of talk on social media, and it happened, 6 months, a year ago when everybody was competing to get offers accepted. The thought was, if I go to the listing agent, they're going to keep all of the commission, so they're going to push my offer to the top of the pile. And that was making its rounds all over Facebook because that's where old men like me go on Facebook, not on TikTok. But it was interesting that caught fire as a strategy because in the old days, prior to the buying frenzy of the pandemic, people were thinking what you just mentioned. If I go to the listing agent, I can get a better price. And I guess let me back up and explain how the commission structure typically works. And I'm going to start by saying I'm not a real estate attorney. This is my disclaimer. Everything in a real estate transaction is negotiable except for the governmental fees. So there's no standard commission. There's no standard commission splits. Okay, that's out of the way. Typically what happens when you're selling a property and you choose a listing agent, they negotiate a commission, and it's usually a percentage. And it's negotiable, but let's use the example of 5%. So on a $300,000 sale, there's going to be $15,000 in commission. That goes to the listing agent's brokerage. Now, they typically, and I mean almost always, have agreed to pay a portion of that commission to the buyer's agent for bringing a buyer and working that side of the transaction. It's called a cooperating brokerage commission split. So oftentimes it's half. Again, everything's negotiable, but let's just use round, easy numbers. So $15,000 goes to the seller side, and $7,500 of that goes to the buyer's brokerage. So the thought process that you're presenting or that you heard on TikTok is, I can negotiate a $7,500 discount because they don't have to share the commission. Well, that's not how it works. They just keep the commission. So I always ask people this question when presented the opportunity to go direct to the listing agent. And I'm not saying it may work out wonderfully. Listing agents are wonderful people. But would you use your husband or wife's divorce attorney if you were getting a divorce? And the answer is always no. You want your own representation. You want your own team. You want people who are representing your best interest, not the interest of both parties or the transaction. And based on that model I just shared, it often costs you no more money because the selling side is splitting the commission with the buying side. So I hope that helps. That's a brilliant question. If you need more info, stick with us. We'll be back on the other side of this break. We're going to take a quick 2-minute break, and we'll be back with more of the Mr. Mortgage Show. It's not every day that you need an appraisal, whether it's for a divorce settlement, estate planning, or maybe you're appealing a tax assessment, or you just want to make sure you have adequate coverage in your property insurance. When you need a certified appraisal, turn to my friends at soflappraisal.com. That's soflappraisal.com. Peter and his team have been appraising properties here in South Florida for decades. soflappraisal.com. And tell them you heard this on the Mr. Mortgage Show.
Here's another 5-star review.
As a realtor, I have a bunch of mortgage brokers to choose from, but I prefer to work with Mark and his Mr. Mortgage team. In this crazy market, there is no room for error, especially on the mortgage side. Mark's team moves fast, keeps everybody in the loop, and makes things happen. They always give my clients a great deal and take the time to walk them through every step of the process. When you're considering a lender, I encourage you to talk to Mark Eitel and the Mr. Mortgage team.
Hey, it's Mark Eitel, host of the Mr. Mortgage Show. You hear me all the time talking about the need to have the very best team representing you in a real estate transaction. And that starts with a really great agent. If you've got a great agent, that's awesome. But if you don't, check out www.reallyGreatAgents.com. There you'll find the best of the best, regardless of the city they work in or the brokerage they work for. www.reallyGreatAgents.com. www.reallyGreatAgents.com.
Are inflation and everyday expenses eating into your retirement income? Maybe you've considered a reverse mortgage and have unanswered questions like, do I still own my property? Can the bank kick me out? What happens when I die? Can I still leave my house to my kids? These are all great questions. Visit www.moreaboutreverse.com to learn more. That's www.moreaboutreverse.com. www.moreaboutreverse.com.
Welcome back to the Mr. Mortgage Show. Call us now at 855-462-7292.
All right, we are back. My name is Mark Eitel, and you are still tuned into the Mr. Mortgage Show. So you are either terribly bored or we're doing something right. But either way, we're happy to have you with us. If you have questions, call or text them to 855-462-7292. That is the Anytime hotline, 855-462-7292. And when we are not in the studio, that rings to my office. So you can use that truly anytime, 855-462-7292, or check us out online at mr.mortgage, never a .com, just mr.mortgage. And hey, you guys keep bringing great questions to the table. We just finished up that last segment. We were talking about using the income from a part-time job to qualify for a mortgage. We talked a little bit about the timeline for a reverse mortgage. And then I was having some fun with Patrick, who gets his real estate advice from TikTok. So if any of that sounds fascinating and you missed it or you want to hear it a second time, check out MrMortgageRadio.com. That's MrMortgageRadio.com. Dom posts all of the previous episodes up there. I think there's 80 some odd episodes up there already. So we are building a library to entertain you. But yeah, check it out if you want more information. So as always, I enjoy your questions. They're my favorite part of the show. I know Dom mentioned we've got some stacked up there, so I'm going to try to get through a rapid round. And I was going to do the rapid round sound effect, but Dom's doing the neck cut, don't do it, sign language. So, all right, Dom, I won't. But let's dive into some more questions.
Brad is asking, does any bank offer an equity line on an investment property? I have 2 rentals, and I like to pull some cash out.
Okay, Brad, that's a great question. So equity lines, also known as HELOCs, home equity line of credit, typically not available on rental property or investment property, income-producing property. A HELOC is pretty much designed to be your primary residence only. Now, here's something really cool. There's some new products called he loans. Now, I know there are people out there saying, well, I'm a he, but I identify as a she. You can call it a she loan. You can call it a sure loan, a they loan, whatever you want to call it. Put whatever pronoun on there that you want. But it's a loan, not a line. And the difference is it's basically a cash out second mortgage. And they are available on investment property. So while an equity line is not, a regular, 20-year loan, cash out second mortgage is available. That is a he loan. So that may help you, Brad, but no HELOCs on investment properties that I'm aware of. But hey, we're going to keep them rolling. What else do we have, Dom?
Donald sent this question in. Can I buy two houses at the same time? One is going to be my home and the second is going to be a rental. Will this cause a problem? If I need to wait on the rental, how long should I wait?
Hey, Donald, that's a great question. So, yes, you can buy two properties at the same time. It's much, much easier if you're using the same mortgage company. It's always tough when people try to, they're trying the old sleight of hand, right? I'll close this one with this guy and that one with that guy. And then, never what is that? Never the two shall meet. I don't remember the saying, but if you're doing it that way, it's most likely not going to work because they're going to see additional inquiries on your credit and require letters of explanation. But assuming that you have the credit, assets, income, everything's necessary and checks out for each individual purchase without overlap, then yes, we've done it before. We don't do it all the time. There's not a lot of people who want to pull the trigger on multiple properties at the same time. But yes, a primary and an investment can be done at the same time. So I hope that helps. If you need more information, I'm always open for a conversation. 855-462-7292. Hey, Dom, what do you have?
Janet sent this in. Hi, I signed up at reallyGreatAgents.com. They sent me 3 agents to talk with. I'm not sure what to ask them. Do you have any advice?
Hey, that is a great question. I was just talking about Really Great Agents a little bit earlier in the show, so I am tickled that you had a good experience. So here's the thing. If they came through the Really Great Agents referral network, then they've already been vetted on their ability to perform, right? They're good agents. They're capable agents. They close transactions. They have whatever they need in place, a team. I guess what I'm saying is their ability to perform has already been vetted for you. So for me, if it was me and I was interviewing agents, I would want to have discussions around who am I going to work with? Are you my point of contact, Mr. or Mrs. Agent, or do you have a team member that is going to become a point of contact? Because oftentimes some agents will have a full team and they'll come out and do the listing presentation and get you signed up and, you bought into the presentation, but you may never see that person again in the transaction because they have a team. And that's not a bad thing. The doctor is not also the nurse and he's not also the receptionist. So, having a team is a good thing, but you just want to know, who am I talking to? When am I able to get a hold of them? I work from, 8 until 6. I'm in a manufacturing facility. I can't take a cell phone call at work. So I'm going to need you to be able to communicate with me between 6 and 7 p.m., Mr. or Mrs. Agent. Is that okay? Those are the type of questions that I would have just to make sure that you both are on the same page with expectations of communication. And then I think one of the major things that are overlooked is there rapport? Do you like talking to this person? Because if all 3 agents are equal in every other way, I would choose the person who I have the best rapport with, because I don't care, even in the most smooth transaction, there are frustrations and confusion, and there's going to be points where you need to be able to jump on the phone and have, a significant conversation with somebody, and it helps if you have a good rapport with them. So that's what I would be looking for. And then if you're, not part of the Really Great Agents network and you're just interviewing, and this is for other listeners, right? Not you went through the process. But those are the questions I would start with, and then I would get into, numbers, production numbers. Do you specialize in my neighborhood? Do you specialize in this type of property? If you're selling a, double wide manufactured home in a 55 plus neighborhood, you're going to want to deal with an agent who has the knowledge base around that, because I can tell you as a lender, there are different protocols and different steps involved in a transaction like that. So I hope that helps. That was a great question. I'm super excited to learn that you had a good experience with the Really Great Agents process. And if anybody out there wants a great agent, check out reallyGreatAgents.com. We're always happy to get you in touch with somebody, and you take it from there. We don't, pass your number around. You're not getting bombed with phone calls. You get their information, and then you lead the charge. So you are in charge of the whole thing. But anyway, thank you for that question. I hope that helps. Let me throw it over to Dom for another one.
Ruby sent this. I plan on getting a HELOC on my current house and using the money for a down payment on a new house. I'm moving into the new house and keeping this one to rent. Will this work?
Hey, Ruby. So here's the thing. In theory, that would work. But where my red flag popped up is if you keep that current property and turn it into a rental, there's most likely some language in the HELOC itself, in the note, that is going to require that to be paid. Now, I may be wrong, but oftentimes that HELOC has to be on a primary residence. So just confirm that you're not violating the agreement, because should the lender find out, they would be able to call that due, which basically means you're going to have to pay it in full. But from a strategy standpoint, you can use borrowed funds as a down payment. So if the HELOC thing doesn't work out, you could do a cash out refinance on that rental property. But a lot of people are hesitant to do cash out refis right now because rates are higher than the rate they have. And I get it. I totally get it. Most of the refinances we're doing right now are around paying off other debts to reduce all of the monthly outflow. That still makes sense because you're not looking at rate, you're looking at budget at that point. But what might work for you is that HE loan that I mentioned a little bit earlier, which is a second mortgage. You can pull the equity out, and that's perfectly acceptable on an investment property. So the strategy makes sense. The product might be the challenge, a HELOC versus a HE loan. But hope that helps. I appreciate the question. You hear the music. You know what that means. That's my cue. We will be back in two. Sit tight for 2 minutes. On the other side of this break, we're going to take more of your questions and get on with the Mr. Mortgage Show.
Are inflation and everyday expenses eating into your retirement income? Maybe you've considered a reverse mortgage and have unanswered questions like, do I still own my property? Can the bank kick me out? What happens when I die? Can I still leave my house to my kids? These are all great questions. Visit www.moreaboutreverse.com to learn more. That's www.moreaboutreverse.com. www.moreaboutreverse.com.
Here's another 5-star review.
We kept our business above water with credit cards during the pandemic. I'm glad we did. Business is better than ever. But I didn't want to be a slave to those credit card payments. I called Mark about the rec loan he advertises. Long story short, we did a rec refinance and paid off everything, even the car. Now we only have the mortgage payment. We're saving a bunch every month. Yes, we are happy to recommend Mark and the Mr. Mortgage team.
Hey, it's Mark Eitel, host of the Mr. Mortgage Show. You hear me all the time talking about the need to have the very best team representing you in a real estate transaction. And that starts with a really great agent. If you've got a great agent, that's awesome. But if you don't, check out www.reallyGreatAgents.com. There you'll find the best of the best, regardless of the city they work in or the brokerage they work for. www.reallyGreatAgents.com. www.reallyGreatAgents.com. It's not every day that you need an appraisal, whether it's for a divorce settlement, estate planning, or maybe you're appealing a tax assessment, or you just want to make sure you have adequate coverage in your property insurance. When you need a certified appraisal, turn to my friends at SOFLappraisal.com. That's SOFLappraisal.com. Peter and his team have been appraising properties here in South Florida for decades. SOFLappraisal.com. And tell them you heard this on the Mr. Mortgage Show.
Welcome back to the Mr. Mortgage Show. Call us now at 855-462-7292.
All right, we are back. My name is Mark Eitel, and you are tuned in to the Mr. Mortgage Show, where each week Dom and I take all your questions, we dive through the data, we knock the headlines out of the way and get right to the facts, and we answer all your questions. So you have better information. You've got the info that you need to go out and make better decisions for you and your family when it comes to real estate or mortgages, or heck, if you want to talk about tequila or rock and roll or motorcycles, or you sing 80s tunes like we did to open the show. And if you're just joining us, you missed my 1982 medley of movies and music. And should you wish to hear that for yourself, go visit MrMortgageRadio.com. As soon as we get finished up here, Dom is going to post that recorded version of today's show up there as a podcast. So check out MrMortgageRadio.com and you'll hear Mark Eitel sings the hits of 1982. But now we are doing the mortgage show. So let me throw it over to Dom and see if we can squeeze in another question.
Randall is asking, it seems like I see reverse mortgage ads everywhere lately. We're not ready for one yet, but I'm wondering if these loans are new, since all of a sudden the ads are everywhere.
Hey, Randall, that's a fantastic observation, my man. No, the product's not new. It's been around for decades. The first one I was ever involved with was, I guess probably got to do this from memory, over 10 years ago. We've always been licensed to do them, but I became passionate about them when somebody very close to me was in need, and I wanted to learn everything I could about it. But I started with the Tom Selleck commercials and did the internet research. But no, you are seeing them all over the place because refinances are down 90%, and there are a lot of mortgage brokers out there who sat in call centers with headphones on and talked to people all day about refining their mortgage. And those guys are out there looking for opportunity. And right now, the only opportunity that's not related to purchase mortgages, and I'm totally blessed that that was always the majority of our focus, is reverse mortgages and equity lines still make sense in this market. So you're getting cold calls and commercials and, heck, some guy might even tape a fake mustache on and get on TikTok and start pretending like he's Tom Selleck talking about reverse mortgages. But wonderful observation. No, they're not new. And yeah, we've been doing them for a long time. Got really serious about them a little over a decade ago. So if you have questions about them, I certainly am happy to help. 855-462-7292 is where you would shoot those questions. But man, I'm looking at the list of notes because I scratched the questions down on a piece of paper when Dom reads them. We've had some really interesting questions today. We talked about everything from advice on TikTok around real estate to, is the Fed going to Snoop Dogg high us up with these interest rates? Where are we going with all this? But man, you guys have brought some really wonderful questions. I certainly appreciate it. I'm going to ask you a favor real quick. If any of this resonates with you, if you find it interesting, entertaining, if you think there's valuable insight here, please share the show. As I mentioned, you can find all the back episodes at MrMortgageRadio.com. Or you can learn more about me and my team at Mr.Mortgage. There's no .com there, just Mr.Mortgage. But hey, if you have a friend or family or coworker who's really struggling with how to make a decision in this market, does it still make sense to sell? Should I buy? Should I refi? Equity line versus equity loan, anything that you hear people talking about real estate or mortgage-wise, I'd love you to introduce them to us. I'm hoping I can count on you to spread the word. After the show, Dom and I are going to put on some green tights and some little Peter Pan hats and get our flutes out and go up and down the street and Pied Piper for the show. Well, Dom just tapped out. He's not going to do it. But if you see a 50-year-old guy walking, 50 years, that was a couple years ago. But anyway, if you see some old guy in tights going up and down the street, Pied Piper, and that's me. We're trying to spread the word for the show. So I'm hoping I can count on you to be part of that clan and spread the word. But hey, guys, you hear the music. You know what that means. We're wrapping up another week. My God, time flies. I hope you had as much fun as we do. But yeah, join us next week right here. Same time, same station. If you need us during the week, 855-462-7292 is the anytime hotline, or check us out online at Mr.Mortgage. Have a great week. See you next week.
That's a wrap. Join Mark Eitel next week for more thrilling, edge-of-your-seat discussions about real estate and mortgages right here on The Mr. Mortgage Show.